Infiltration. Only those who can be controlled via blackmail or like beliefs were installed in critical leadership positions across all political and non-political control and command positions, CCP.
So we're finally now going to learn who was hanging out with Epstein, who was fighting so long and so hard to keep that list hidden. Well, according to reports, there's 170 names on the list. That's all good news. But we want to focus on a topic that's entirely important, that's likely to get lost in all of this hubbub. Who was Epstein working for? Who funded him? Who's behind him? The press wants you to believe that Epstein was just some rich guy who liked trafficking in underage girls, and that's true. The real story, as we all know, goes a whole lot deeper than that. According to one of Epstein's oldest associates, convicted Ponzi scheme fraudster Stephen Hoffenberg, Epstein moved deep in intelligence circles. He knew arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi. He was close with British media tycoon and longtime Mossad source Robert Maxwell. So close, in fact, that you've probably heard of Robert Maxwell's daughter, a certain Ghislaine Maxwell. According to multiple people who've gone on the record, Epstein worked with multiple intelligence agencies, including, importantly, the Israeli government. In 2008, he traveled to Israel, considering staying there to avoid jail time for his sex offense case in Florida. The weirdest part, though, is that for the last decade of his life, Epstein basically bragged about all of the global figures that he advised, all of the money that he made in shady industries, all of the global intel adjacent contacts that he had. That only lends credibility to the idea, of course, that eventually someone found Epstein enough of a problem, so they had to silence him. Who is that someone? Above all, it's Israel. And if Israel was employing Epstein, then we need to talk about what they were enabling by proxy: the sex trafficking of underage girls for the purpose of blackmailing influential global figures. Period.
CCP necessary to ensure protective blanket insurance. Traitors everywhere. Leadership in joint ops with China CCP in effort to regain power. It was never about the virus. Sequence of events. Flynn first strike designed to 1. Cripple 2. Prevent exposure of illegal acts. Hussein WHCOC through NATSEC intel discovery. 3. Install controlled replacement. Rogue One McMaster.
Michael Flynn, the National Security Counselor to the President of the United States, becomes essentially one of the shortest-serving senior presidential advisors in recent history. He stepped aside because he told a lie to the vice president.
Perhaps 24 days in, he is now stepping out. We do have reports that he didn't have an opportunity to stay, that Donald Trump didn't tell him to resign, that he resigned on his own.
Just wanted to announce, we've been working all weekend, very diligently, very hard, that General H.R. McMaster will become the National Security Advisor. He's a man of tremendous talent and tremendous experience. I watched and read a lot over the last 2 days. He is highly respected by everybody in the military, and we're very honored to have him.
McMaster removal of loyalist. Intel community _NATSEC.
It's almost open warfare between McMaster and Steve Bannon, the president's chief strategist, according to administration officials, all dating back to fired National Security Advisor Mike Flynn.
There is this battle, and I think that it does come down to a difference in opinion between McMaster and Bannon, and the view, I think, that McMaster is sort of clearing out Mike Flynn, the former National Security Advisor, Mike Flynnites. That's a problem that Bannon allies see as sort of going directly to the heart of Trump's own agenda.
CNN has reported that McMaster had been at odds with President Trump on some national security issues, such as more troops for Afghanistan, and had been undercut by Bannon. But once retired General John Kelly arrived this week as Chief of Staff, he may have signaled his willingness to allow McMaster latitude to run the NSC. McMaster has fired 5 top NSC officials tied to Flynn.
Rogue 2, Coats DNI, prevent declass House Senate blockade. Pre-install, Rogue 3 through 6. Referrals to POTUS, RE, McMaster, Coates, Ray, Bolton, +++. Install controlled, Rogue 7, Bolton. Bolton removal of loyalists. Intel community _NATSEC. Intel community NATSEC _WH. essential to control infiltration, to prevent D-class, public exposure of true events. Illegal serve are candidates 1-2, House members 1X, Senate members 1X, journalists 1X, A and B1, X plus class 1 through 99 events.
It turns out, according to new reports, the FBI may have had a spy in or interacting with the Trump campaign during the 2016 election, a government spy in the campaign. That sounds like a pretty important piece of information, that the Obama administration may have been spying on a rival campaign, you think? But for some reason, we're only just learning about it now. Why is that? Apparently because the FBI and the DOJ deliberately hid that information from Congress. Of course, Congress has authority over the FBI. It's not the other way around, as much as the FBI would like to believe that. So this deception would be gross misconduct at minimum. But of course, gross misconduct would be nothing new in the FBI of Jim Comey.
Based on what you know so far, do you still stand by your statement that the campaign was spied upon?
Oh, it's clearly spied upon. I mean, that's what electronic surveillance is. I think wiring people up to go in and talk to people and make recordings of their conversations is spying. I think going through people's emails, which they did as a result of the FISA warrant, they went through everything, from Page's life.
Because he wasn't in the campaign at the point where he began the surveillance.
Yes, but his emails go back. I mean, the main reason they were going for the FISA warrant initially was to go back historically and seize all his emails and texts and all that stuff from back months and even years. So they were covering the period that he was in the campaign, and that's exactly the reason they went for the FISA, to get that stuff.
Mueller installed, Comey termination _ loss of power, POTUS inside of a box, prevent counterattack.
Had I not fired James Comey, who was a disaster, by the way, it's possible I wouldn't even be standing here right now. We caught him in the act.
Impeachment installed, Mueller termination _ loss of power, POTUS inside of box, prevent counterattack.
Today, I am asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment.
C-19 insurance plan, above fail.
Viral pneumonia has hit central China's Wuhan city. Authorities have reported 27 cases in total.
It's a new type of coronavirus.
C-19 installed, impeachment termination _ loss of power, POTUS inside of box, prevent counterattack.
Out of that historic victory for President Trump in the impeachment trial, the Senate acquitting him on both charges. This was a straight party line vote, except for Senator Mitt Romney, who did something no politician has ever done before, voting to remove his own party's president from office.
C-19 _ stage 1, inform POTUS, Intel plus CDC plus WHO plus advisors. Nothing to fear, do not close travel, do nothing. The political setup.
Getting back to your first question, it isn't something that the American public needs to worry about or be frightened about, because we have ways of preparing, of screening, of people coming in, and we have ways of responding, like we did with this one case in Seattle, Washington, who had traveled to China and brought back the infection.
C-19 _ stage 2, inform POTUS of doomsday inaccurate scenarios, models predicting death count 1 million plus. The political force _ lockdown, wipe economic and unemployment gains.
This simulation uses only microdroplets.
This one in particular shows how microdroplets can linger in a room for at least 20 minutes. ProMedica Dr. Brian Kaminsky says that's exactly why it's helpful information.
The nice thing about simulations is that they provide a visual. The virus isn't visible to us on a daily basis, and being able to see that visual helps connect a little bit better and helps us understand how this virus works.
C-19 _ stage 3, activate controlled D-govs to spike death count plus project statewide fear by presenting alarming on-ground conditions, hospital, care supplies, projections.
The coronavirus has now entered a devastating new phase.
The U.S. death toll from the virus has surpassed 100 people.
20,000. More than 46,000.
150,000.
200,000.
400,000 people have now died from COVID-19.
C-19 _ stage 4, push testing to spike infected rate, incline due to daily testing. Inc., the political setup, controlled MSDNC failure to report death count rates proportional to infected rate. Deliberate miscounting of infected numbers, percentage. Change non-positive to positive. Label death of non_C19 as C19_ etc.
As soon as this week, hospitals could begin offering weekly tests to all employees following a mandate from California Department of Public Health. This comes as COVID cases are on the rise and hospitals are being inundated with more patients afflicted by the coronavirus.
And thanks to the millennials who have been heeding our guidance, they have been coming forward and getting testing. And so whereas before we told them to stay home, now we are telling them to be tested.
C19 Stage 5. Eliminate, censor any opposing views, anti-narrative.
My name is Dr. Jeff Barkey, and I'm here representing thousands of physicians across the country whose voices are being silenced because we don't agree with the mainstream media and the experts who are telling us what to do.
Ready when needed. Activate 4-year BLM narrative, 4x power, uses division plus 2020. C19 infect rates to justify close limit until November 3rd. C19 calculated D political gain. 1. Eliminate record economic gains. Two, eliminate record unemployment gains.
So it's been it was a great day and a great day yesterday, and now today we're really celebrating it because nobody thought it was possible. Nobody thought we could ever have that kind of an economic gain. Nobody was predicting it. So we're very happy about that. It really shows that our policies work. If you had a president with different ideas, instead of having a 33.1 gain, you'd have a disaster on your hands.
Three, shelter Biden from public appearances, limit public exposure of mental condition.
Somebody, with less than 2 weeks to go before Election Day, and you're taking a vacation 4 out of 5 days, at this point, something is being hidden from the American people, from my perspective. I think Joe Biden, we need to demand that he take a physical exam and release the results, and a cognitive exam like your father did and release the results. This is beyond unusual. No candidate that I can think of in my 30-plus years of doing this job on radio and TV has ever acted this way. They have put him in the Candidate Witness Protection Program, Eric. What the hell is wrong with Joe Biden?
4, shelter Biden from Ukraine exposure, narrative change, media focus. C19.
Joe Biden's son, Hunter, is emerging as an issue in the presidential campaign. We're learning new information tonight about a Senate Republican investigation into the younger Biden. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel has details.
The 87-page report says in 2015, 2 senior State Department officials, George Kent and Amos Hochstein, raised concerns to Vice President Joe Biden's office and even with Biden personally about the perception of a conflict of interest regarding Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board. Quote, despite the efforts of these individuals, their concerns appear to have fallen on deaf ears. And warning of the risk of undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine, quote, officials within the Obama administration ignored the glaring warning signs when the vice president's son joined the board of a company owned by a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch. Senate Republican Chairman Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley led the report, and no Treasury records show potential criminal activity relating to transactions among and between Hunter Biden, his family, his associates, and foreign nationals. A key Senate Republican calls the findings extremely troubling.
There's been a lot done, a lot of interviews. There's a lot to see there, and this is very serious.
A spokesman for the Biden campaign says this is all about the election. Quote, an attack founded on a long disproven hardcore right-wing conspiracy theory that hinges on Senator Johnson himself being corrupt, and that the senator has now explicitly stated he's attempting to exploit to bail out Donald Trump's re-election campaign. The Senate Democratic leader blasted this probe.
Senators Grassley and Johnson should reimburse taxpayers for the money they wasted. The Johnson report should be relegated to the dustbin of history.
5. Shelter Biden from P_debates. Requested demands due to C-19.
Over the past 6 weeks, Joe Biden has been running his presidential campaign from his basement. The presumptive Democratic nominee has held at least 15 live streams from his Delaware home since the coronavirus pandemic began, and they range in topics from town halls with people impacted by coronavirus to endorsements from party leaders like former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders.
6. Delay deconvention strategic. Takeover of nominee post-conference.
We can't let up. An unprecedented event for extraordinary times, a social media gathering and television gala hosted by Hollywood star Eva Longoria Bastón. There were reminders of the racial tensions that have divided the nation, from the mayor of Washington, D.C., among others.
7. Eliminate delay POTUS rally term energy.
These protesters were not interested in social distancing. As activists held their rally outside the state capitol building here, many are openly dismissive of the science and increasingly seething at the economic cost that they are paying. The crowd here was not just angry, there was also a patriotic fervor, and many who feel that staying at home is somehow un-American.
8. Eliminate ability for people to gather, divide.
Hello, this is Robert De Niro. We all need to stay home. We need to stop the spread of this virus, and we can only do it together. Not just to protect ourselves, but to protect others and all the older people you love. Please, I'm watching you.
Hi everybody, it's Danny DeVito, and I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart, all over the state of New York, stay home. I mean, everybody. I mean, we got this virus, this pandemic, and you know, young people can get it, and they can transmit it to old people. The next thing you know, I'm out of there. So Governor Cuomo asked me to ask you, please, do us a favor, all of us, and stay home, not spread this virus around. Thank you. Watch a little TV, why don't you?
9. Eliminate ability to find peace, strength in time of need. Strict church closures.
We're hearing from officials at the CDC. There was a lot of debate over these recommendations between the Office of HHS, Civil Rights Division, and senior leaders at the CDC. Those members of the Civil Rights Division feeling as though that CDC officials were restricting religion. CDC officials pushed back in comments to us saying that they weren't trying to restrict religion, they were simply trying to save lives, and they hope that these recommendations do just that.
10. Promote mail-in voting as only safe method. Bypass NSA election security, installed midterms +1.
What does voting look like in the 2020 election amid a pandemic? Polling stations are potential hotspots. They inherently pose the risk of mass social gathering, plus sharing confined voting booths and tools could lead to contaminated surfaces. Voting by mail could be a solution to these problems. Voting by mail is slightly different state to state. Typically, this type of voting is reserved for absentee ballots. These are given out on an individual basis when you request one from your local election officials. Then, once election day is closer, you'd receive a ballot in the mail, fill it out at home, and mail it back to your local officials to be counted. But what does this look like on a national scale when mail-in ballots would likely be in high demand?
The logistics of actually doing this in November is very problematic.
This one mule made 53 trips to 20 drop boxes. He's not alone. We tracked 2,000 mules making multiple ballot drops. Leaving no fingerprints. Snapping photos to get paid. A coordinated ring of illegal vote harvesting in all the key states where the election was decided.
They've delivered us a clear victory.
Push state bailout stimulus, CA-NY, plus wish list items.
Hey everybody, it's Governor Gavin Newsom, and I'm incredibly proud of California's economic recovery. Close to an $80 billion operating surplus, and that's afforded us an opportunity to do something no other state in U.S. history has ever done, and that's provide over $12 billion of tax rebates. We call it the Golden State Stimulus.
If it passes the way things stand, here's what you can expect. Americans earning less than $80,000 a year will get a $1,400 check. Couples making less than $160,000 a year would each get the same. Parents will also receive $1,400 for each child. Adult dependents, including college students, are also eligible. Now, the bill extends unemployment benefits as well. Nearly $800 million also from this relief package is earmarked for the region.
12. Increase national debt. Place China into controlling debt position, regain leverage.
There's no such thing as a free ride. And as the U.S. debt to GDP ratio takes off and goes to new highs, is this borrowing going to be too much, or can we avoid a debt trap? I think the answer is no. You can't avoid the debt trap. The Fed has told you that. They'd rather make sure that the economy is up and going right now so that you have an economy that you can fix rather than seeing one crater. The problem is getting out of this problem is going to take decades. We have underfunded Social Security. We're going to be putting in, as we all know, more infrastructure programs. We've got to keep the economy going. We have a COVID-19 situation that at best is still questionable. So we have all that, and you have to ask yourself, where do we go from there? In the end, it's called inflation. The Fed wants it, they're going to get it, and unfortunately, it is a debt trap.
13. Test conditional limits of public acceptance. Obey.
Look, I mean, the vast majority, overwhelming majority of Californians are now in this new stay-at-home order protocol.
The new Cuyahoga County stay-at-home advisory is already in effect, though, and so far, it will last about a month.
The Department of Public Safety will enforce Governor Brian Kemp's order. Now, you're not going to see any checkpoints, but if officers notice large gatherings, they will issue a warning. And if you don't break up that party, you could get charged with reckless conduct.
The state's 6 most populous counties stay on lockdown, and he says social distancing rules stay in effect no matter where you are.
Starting tonight, New York will be put on pause as a city that never sleeps and the entire state shut down all non-essential businesses. Statewide, people ordered to stay home. Across the country, more than 80 million are now under a virtual lockdown. Connecticut, Illinois, New Jersey, and California also under a stay-at-home order, with health officials projecting the number of cases to spike even higher, a warning from the country's leading infectious disease expert.
Not every single person in the United States needs to get tested. When you go in and get tested, you are consuming personal protective equipment.
14. Test conditional limits of public non-acceptance.
So right here has become the most divisive thing on the earth right now.
I've got to put my 16-year-old son with a face covering on? I don't think so.
That's what America is all about. It's all about individualism.
When something is being imposed by the government, that touches deep, deep feelings about individual freedom that roots in some of the founding ideas of the United States.
Test conditional limits of state authority, governors and mayors.
To reopen with some form of physical distancing. Trump even called to liberate Michigan, Minnesota, and Virginia, all states with Democratic governors from stay-at-home orders. Back-to-work protests resumed in several parts of the country as people demanded to go out. The visuals on your screen now show a medical worker standing in the middle of a road, blocking an anti-lockdown protester.
16. Test conditional limits of media, social censorship.
We have documented hard evidence that shows that the Department of Homeland Security, under the guise of national security protection, had their own backdoor portal to Facebook so that they could expedite their red flags of information that they didn't like, that they didn't want, that they deemed to be a national security threat.
As president, I'll not allow the American people to be bullied by these giant corporations. Many people have wanted this to be done by presidents for a long time.
Alleging bias, US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order aimed at curbing protections for social media giants.
My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it that social media companies that engage in censoring or any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield. That's a big deal.
If we'd had an open discussion, Laura, the schools would not have closed in the fall of 2020. If we had an open discussion, the lockdowns would have been lifted much earlier because the data and evidence behind them was so bad. Twitter, by suppressing scientific discussion, harmed science, harmed children, and harmed the American public.
Who benefits the most? Democrats, China, CCP. Russia is the enemy. China is our friend.
He may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
This president needs to be impeached.
You're confident that at least some Trump associates will wind up in jail?
If I was betting, I would say yes.
Well, I think they're all going to end up together in prison.
I'm talking about the entirely legitimate question of whether Donald Trump could be compromised by the Russian government.
We had specific intelligence that Hillary Clinton was creating a plan to vilify Donald Trump, to falsely accuse him of ties to Russia. And the intelligence community and the FBI knew this. And President Obama, Vice President Biden were briefed by John Brennan and James Clapper and Jim Comey in early August of 2016. And John Solomon's earlier point was right. It all should have stopped at that point. Everything related to the Steele dossier was known to be untrue, but yet it was the predicate for moving forward with an unjust, unfair, and ultimately now everyone accepts a criminally negligent investigation against the Trump campaign.
MSDNC social media programming.
Now, if you watch MSDNC or if you watch, which is one of them, and if you watch fake news CNN, totally fake news. I mean, I watch. It's almost like these are the most wonderful people on earth. They're not. When you look at the real clips, they're not. There are a lot of bad people, and there are a lot of good people. There's some great people. But there are a lot of really, really bad people in there. And you have a lot of radical left, crazy people, and you have people that don't want good for our country. At the same time, we need healing and all of those things, but we need safety in our cities. And when they don't take care of it, we took care of it in Washington, D.C. I said 2 days ago, this is the safest place on earth. We brought in incredible people. They took care of the situation very easily. It was very easy for them. And in Minnesota, as you know, we took care of that situation with their great city. We took care of it very easily. Once they went through 3 days of hell, and I had to say, you got to get them in. Once they came in, it was like a knife cutting butter.
Everything seen yesterday, today, and tomorrow equals calculated political moves events, designed and launched by D Party in coordination with other domestic and foreign entities in an attempt to regain power over you, prevent accountability. Shadow presidency, Hussein. Shadow government, information warfare, insurgency.
People would ask me, knowing what you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweat.
Your voice and your vote matters. Patriots stand united. Welcome to the revolution.